Hello everyone, there's Harmanpreet Kaur from the University of Windsor Faculty of Education, and today I am into the discussion with
أحلام Alawneh. I'm a thesis-based student and here with Harman to discuss the article by Watson AL.
and the title of the article is a case study of the in-class use of a video game for teaching high school history. So, what do you suggest would start with the research methodology?
Yeah, we can do that. Or how about we start talking about the purpose of the study?
Sure, you go ahead.
So the purpose of the study by Watson AL was to understand teacher and student experience with and in perspective on the in-class use of educational video games.
Yes.
And it examines the case of a high school history class, a video game designed with educational purposes in mind, and it's used in the classroom to teach about World War II.
Yes. World War II is taken as the topic for the students, and the title of the game is, I suppose, Making History. How do you find that? Isn't it interesting to include the video games into classroom?
Yes, I especially in teaching history as a subject, I thought it was really interesting to allow the students to be part of a game to learn about history on the history of World War II in specific.
Exactly. When I look back into my days, school days, history was a subject full of dates and information which every student used to get bored after a few time, and then introducing a video game might be a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, not much engagement would be attained from the very classic way of teaching history, but with the use of a game, engagement from students would be really appreciated.
Yeah. So while navigating the article, I went through the literature review, but I didn't find any definition of the video game. The article was like the author jumped into the use of video games in education. Uh, it wasn't giving the clear ideas which video games to be included because video games can be of different types.
Yes.
And how do you suggest is the researcher give a review given by the authors? Is it in the right direction?
I think they started with the assumption that the reader is well acquainted with the topic of video games and the use of video games and for educational purposes. That's why they just jumped into the use of video games for education and reviewed some of the studies that were conducted, most of which were actually surveys.
And then they divided the section into two. First, they discussed about the video games in the classroom, and then they discussed about the video games for teaching social studies, taking the subject as the primary uh, focus of interest. And when they were talking about the video games in classroom, their main focus was that the teachers who they surveyed that if the teachers would like to include video games in the classroom or not. And basically, they got that mostly the teachers were they wanted to include video games into the classroom, but there were certain barriers as well, like
Yeah.
like they highlighted the high cost of technology. Obviously, that is something. Then, for example, the hardware. It can be difficult to bring computer setups for each and every student when the classroom is as big as 25 students, as mentioned in the article, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
then the cost of software licensing.
Yes. So there was a consistent theme amongst the reviewed studies, if you noticed, and it's how games engaged students with the topic being studied and served as a means of increasing their understanding. And mostly all of the studies were in the type of surveys where they're surveyed schools, teachers, and students.
Mhm.
Yep.
And basically focusing on USA, UK, and South Korea as an example, right?
Yeah.
Then they also focused on something which I want to discuss about the negative effects of game on students. Like, yes, there is a problem that gaming is not included in the curriculum. It is difficult to set limits where to start the game, where to end, because the class periods are also shorter. But what about the negative effects? No one is there to analyze what would happen when the students will play that game and the future. How would they react after the class is over? What are your intakes about it?
Yeah, I think what the researchers were aiming at studying is how is mainly what are the benefits of using a video game, and specifically this video game, for
Hmm.
the purpose of learning about World War II. Um, we cannot deny the fact that they do have negative effects on students, but the purpose of this study was to examine the benefits, or for increasing their understanding of history.
Yes, I agree that the classroom dynamics will change towards the student and class will become student centered. Teacher
Yes,
will not work like someone who is the head of the class, but like a facilitator, like a guide who is helping the students to play. But aftermath of the games is not recorded in the article as well.
exactly. Yes,
Then, talking about the methodology, there were four things, right? First was the focus group interview, which was mainly focused on the students. Then
yes.
the individual interview of one teacher. Like I was confused. They mentioned four teachers were there, and then the interview was of Mr. Irwin, who was the developer of the game. Don't you think that it will add biasness because it is only the developer who is discussing the interview?
But that's the whole purpose of conducting a case study. It
Hmm.
revolves around this case, which is the specific teacher, these four classes that he taught, and the 98 students that were attending the classroom, mostly half of which only participated in the focus
Yeah,
group.
30 students only gave the
Yes.
interview. Yes.
Yeah, and the method of qualitative inquiry enacted in the study is a qualitative case study, which only revolves around this very specific case.
And a specific topic, which was
Yeah,
engaging students in
yeah,
video games. Yes.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, according to the authors, Watson and Al, they refer to Stake 1994 and his definition of a case study. And the definition that I found when I went into more details, it talks about specific, unique, bounded system in which researchers gather comprehensive, systematic, and in-depth information. So we cannot study a case analytically or historically by repeated measures, but we can only concentrate, at least for the time being, on the case. And that might answer a question about, generalizability
Hmm.
of the teacher being the sole teacher interviewed. Yeah,
But yes,
because
it
there,
was after the conclusion where the limitations were there, it was recommended to further research in this topic because obviously it is a very small sample size to conclude.
yes,
And then they were talking about constructivist grounded theory in the methodology, where obviously the research methods are analyzed during the study by the researchers and emergent questions are identified to direct and revise the research approaches to better the context of the studied phenomena. This was given by Sharma 2000, which is mentioned in the article.
yes,
Uh, yes, and the researcher is working with, like, there's one professor working with two students, and they
yes,
three are coding, analyzing the data together, transcribing it, and they formulated two themes, right, in the
yeah,
article.
yes, exactly. So they did participate as they were collecting the data.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this is the constructive grounded theory, which seeks an interpretive understanding that accounts for the context of the case being studied, and then the researchers are directed towards the questions they're going to ask, the analysis of the data they gather. So it's like they're directed by the grounded theory.
Yes. So, do you think utilizing grounded theory is appropriate in this article?
Yes, because they planned or
Hmm.
designed the research approach, and then they let it guide them as they interviewed the teacher and as they did the focus groups.
Yes. So I think it is appropriate because they don't have the themes, like the literature is not there. So they are studying it, analyzing it, and then they are setting up the themes. So
Yeah.
that is the whole purpose.
Yes.
Okay. Then let us focus on to the themes. First
Yeah.
one was the student engagement, which is, of course, we can analyze that students will be engaging in such a kind of method because it is different from their normal school routine. And now they are into the center, they are playing the games, they are interacting with each other, collaborating, constructing knowledge. So obviously their engagement will increase, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's what was one of the results of the or conclusions that researchers um, arrived at, which it did increase the engagement, even though they weren't able to measure their understanding of the topic or how much they learned. And that wasn't the purpose at the beginning. They only wanted to measure their engagement.
Yes. And when I compare it with the normal day, when the learning in the class was fast-paced lecture, and even though Mr. Aaron was trying to be humorous, he was cracking jokes, still a few students were felt sleeping in the classroom.
Yeah.
But on the gaming day, they were all engaged in making strategies to win the game.
Yes, that's the nature of teacher as informative or teacher as centered. That's just the nature of the approach. Students would find themselves less engaged, less active, less motivated, while with the use of gaming or video games, he attempts more um, engagement from the students and willingness to participate.
Hmm. And they also discuss outside the classroom, like in the lunch lunch break.
Yes, in the cafeteria. Yeah.
That shows how effective the method of gaming is, right?
Yes.
Do you want to put insights about gaming methods from your experiences?
At the time where I was a student, we hardly used any technology, let alone using games.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't been teaching for a while, so I didn't use video games or online um, uh, preface or anything in my teaching. So
But what about the AI nowadays? Do you think that it is going to change the world's education system?
yes, everything is turning towards AI and the use of AI in education. And what the article that you shared about
Mhm.
the use of AI in foreign language teaching
Yes.
is very interesting. So if you'd like to talk about that article and share your ideas about it.
Yes, in that it was talking about the iCall, which is the intelligent computer assisted language learning. Accordingly, there are a lot of apps which the new teachers into the foreign language teaching can use. For example, we see Duolingo, which is an online platform where where the students can get into and learn any language on their own pace. Other than that, they can use translator websites like Google Translator, or we have a Mexter, which is a dictionary which can be also used to identify if they are in the right space. Also, AI can be used as a robotic interface. Like if I want to work on my speaking skills, I need someone to talk to. Over there,
Right.
I can use a AI robot and it can not only help me practice, but it can also tell me to rectify my words wherever I'm wrong. It will guide me to learn the language better.
Yes, and the very interesting thing in the article you shared is some of these methods are personalized to each student, so they can
Exactly.
share how much understanding of each aspects of the language learning process. And unlike the game that we're talking about in the article, it wasn't personalized and it didn't attempt at measuring the students' understanding. It only wanted them to be engaged
Exactly. Just like there was a line of excellence which they had to, like the average score which they need to cross to get a grade. And it was adding extra pressure on them because they had to play the game. And even though they were graded based on their efforts, but
Yes,
still they needed to achieve that level in the game to get some gradings.
yes, exactly.
And also, I noticed that due to the technical issues, it is mentioned in the article that four students were sitting on a computer and only one was engaging with the game. Others were just using the mouse and hovering it. But I don't think that each and every student would get equal chance to play the game, right?
Yeah, yes. Yeah,
So
that
their
would be fair
learning
for,
will be divided.
yeah, that's how fair. So maybe this will bring us to ethical issues that you noticed in the article,
Yes.
or in the way of collecting data or engaging participants. Have you noticed any ethical issues?
The first and foremost was the parental consent, which they mentioned. Of course, they are minors, so we will need their parents' consent so that we get the permission to interview them, especially
Yes.
in the focus group. But over there, I saw that there was one student who was not interested in gaming, and they didn't got the chance to take his interview because they didn't had his consent. So maybe minors don't understand the consent form, but what about these cases? These are getting missed in the research, right?
That's the there is a need for differentiating between consent and assent, because
Hmm.
it's to be collected from minors or those who are under the age of 18. Like in Quebec, I guess it's the age of 18, and the rest of Canada it's the age of 16. So
Yes.
if they only collected in this study the consent of the parents, this doesn't mean that the students gave assent or they were willing to participate. And they only, I guess, collected 48 of the students returned forms, and only 40,
30, only 30.
40, yeah. So there is a difference between the students who returned consent from their parents and those who actually participated. So maybe their parents did consent, but they didn't. And that's the need for attaining or uh, providing consent by parents and the students themselves. Even if they were minors, they have to give assent, and that's something that
Equally important, yes.
researchers need to differentiate between these two things.
And other than that, they also might have took the consent from the teacher, which is not mentioned, right?
Yes, yeah, they never mentioned, but I guess as long as they approached the teacher.
But also, it was mentioned somewhere in the article that they took the students' learning material, like the
Yeah,
quiz, the geography quiz, and the tests. Would they want a consent for that? I think they should take a consent from the students because they're using their academics.
yeah, was mentioned, but I'd like to believe that they did. Yes. There's also in the same ethical considerations, let's say, when interviewing, the question should be clear, understandable, and not loaded. Uh,
Exactly.
and it might be also problematic for it's called power differential among participants. That's the interviewee or the researchers with students. So
Hmm.
what do you think? Have you noticed anything about this?
The
The
questions of the interview are, however, not mentioned in the article, right?
Yes, they didn't mention the nature of the questions, um, but they did mention that the um, the interviews took 10 to 15 minutes
Yes.
for groups. What?
And the location of the interview was mentioned.
Yes, like the library or um,
Sometime in the parking lot as well because of the
but
fire.
I I found this to be among the ethical issues actually, because when um, in page 140 of Van Hoonaard, in advance of your focus groups, you need to make plans regarding logistics. So they have to rearrange a room first that has a table and comfortable chairs, and that
Hmm.
also um, at certain time. And I don't think 10 to 15 minutes is enough for a group of 8 to 10 students.
And also about the transcribing of the data. You remember that there's a point that they could not record the classroom transcribing because they had noise. Children were making a lot of noise.
Yes, just like the noise you're having now from my child.
It's okay. And then, uh, yeah, so I was talking about the transcribing of the data where they mentioned that the time limit were that they could not get the data because there was a lot of students' voice over there, but they used their field notes to record. So don't you think that it can also be a biased researchers, biased field notes? Because we were not there and they could not record the videos and
Yes,
transcribe them.
because of the noise and the number of students talking over each other's. Yes.
Hmm.
There's one more thing in the focus groups, and it talks about this in chapter 7 in the book. They talk specifically about focus groups in chapter 7 and
Mm-hmm.
how influence of participants over each other. So maybe the students themselves had influence over each other when they're giving their answers to the researchers. And this might be a tendency towards consistency. So they might all agree just because it was conducted right after the class. And they might be tired or overworked or
Yes,
just.
possibilities.
So that might be one of the considerations that a researcher might want to take into account when they choose to do a focus group.
Exactly. And other than that, the group size was 10, which is like a huge because each and every student might not be able to give their opinion in a 20-minute interview, right?
Yes, but in the definition of focus groups in
Hmm.
general, it's 6 to 10. So it's a reasonable number, 8 to 10 students, but
Okay.
maybe choose a better place, longer time, and give students
Equal
more
opportunity to speak.
to share their points. Yeah, because some of them might be just ignored due to like 10 to 15 minutes is definitely not enough.
Yeah, and when transcribing interviews, it is also mentioned in the chapter by Van Horn that you should not only transcribe the words, but you should transcribe the feelings, the behaviors,
Yeah,
what during the process was the participants feeling. But I wonder, the feelings are of the students are not mentioned anywhere in the article.
yeah, yeah. You're right. It talks about what's not said, not
Hmm,
said. That there is it's very important to consider what is not said, even the poses. Um, like when someone is speaking, we have to consider so many things other than the spoken words.
and don't you think while playing the games also, the students might be feeling the peer pressure, like the other students are enjoying it. Maybe someone is not getting what to do, what the game is all about, but it is like enjoying the moment because peers are also into it. But later, it might result that the student has not learned anything from those games. So who is
Exactly.
there to analyze that, right? Because also in the article, it was mentioned that there were some students who could not define the uh, words of the World War II.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that is also a problem with video games.
Yes. But you know what? The fact that there were only, did you say 30? Because I read it were 40 students who ended up participating. So it's Hoonaard, I'll say that it's useful to think about who refuses to participate. Why did they refuse to participate, either them or their parents? And what might the researcher not learn because they didn't have the opportunity to talk to those
Yes,
students, which
yeah.
is half the classroom.
So their voices are unheard, which is the sole objective of qualitative research.
Yes.
And let's now jump on to the limitations,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Which are given in the conclusion part of the article. That the study was conducted in 2011, obviously. Now the new technologies have evolved. We can see AI, which we already talked about. And also during the COVID-19 period, when the entire study was shifted, entire learnings were shifted to the online environment, then also we use technologies to learn. And even I noted in India, the students who were in the class grade first, they were also forced to sit in front of the laptop screen by their parents, even when they were not interested in doing that. And when
Yeah.
after COVID, they were told to go to the school, go back to the school, they used to cry, they used to hesitate, they didn't wanted to get up early in the morning. All those problems were there because the students were now technology dependent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Then the second one is noise during gameplay, which we discussed already, that they couldn't record the content because of the noise. And what about not all the students were interviewed? That is also something which we discussed. So this is what the author records as the limitations. Do
Yeah.
you think any other limitations are there regarding the article?
Um, they talked about the limitation of where, as you said, not the whole 20 hours of footage were transcribed because of the noise.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. And actually, it makes sense because as they were attempting to study, they wanted to study the engagement, which can be measured with the observation, which they actually did. They did observe the classrooms. Um, but the authors mentioned this as a limitation, even though I didn't think it would be.
Hmm. Right. So do you have anything else to say? Another thing, any idea to put
Oh,
into?
yep, that's all I have to say about.
Okay, so let's sign off then. So thank you everyone for joining us to this discussion today, and we hope you enjoyed our discussion. Good
I think
evening,
our
goodbye.
discussion with you as well.
Right.